Tonight's class, as always, is Le'iloi Nishmas Yitzchak Tzvi Ben Yosef, as the Shema should have an elevation. Okay, tonight we're going to be talking about the wine we drink at the Seder. Or if you need, it could be grape juice, but ideally it should be wine. Ideally it should be red, but we're not getting a halacha class on the wine tonight. We did do that already, on those are on our practical duties and classes. Tonight we're going to be talking about the spiritual, this copy, so yeah. Today, we have to go real quick. Tonight we're going to be talking about the spiritual dimension of the wine and why spiritually we need to drink wine. Let me start with a cute little story about wine. Pick a good number. 30, 7, okay. 18. The 7 plus 18 sounds better. What's 7 plus 18? 25 years. That's the number I was going to use. It's Joe and Jack's, I don't know, Jill's 25th wedding anniversary. And this guy, they go to a really fancy restaurant. And of course, the fancy restaurant, they order a bottle of wine. And the woman doesn't really drink. The husband basically finishes the entire bottle of wine. He finishes the whole bottle of wine. He's a little bit tipsy. And now at the meal, he starts saying to his wife, you know, all these years, I don't know how I could have ever survived without you. You've always been there for me when I needed you most. You've always been there for me in my times of need, in my times of stress, in my times of crisis. Never failed me once. You've been like the most loyal thing I could count on. His wife's looking at her husband. That's not usually so eloquent in his appreciation for how his wife is there at his side whenever he needs and always there for him in every crisis. So she sarcastically says to him, "Who's talking? You or the wine?" He says, "I'm talking to the wine."
Is that WH?
What does WH mean?
WHINE.
Oh, no. He's telling the wine, you've always been there for me. We never had a problem. You know, you've been in my time of need. Telling the bottle maybe is what the bottle talking. Okay, whatever. The bottle, the wine. The good joke says bottle, but I said wine because tonight we're going to talk about the wine at the Seder. Okay. So why do we drink 4 glasses of wine at the Seder? I'm going to start with a very basic idea, but of course it's much deeper. Why do we drink 4 cups of wine at the Seder? Besides for that, we're supporting all the wine producers. Because by the way, not a joke, I think like 85% or something of all kosher wine is sold in the month before Passover, which is why basically any kosher wine is going to be kosher for Passover because that's when all the business is. Anyway, yeah, so what did you say?
Other than the fact it says drink.
Well, of course, the Torah, the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law says drink 4 cups of wine. The question that I'm asking you is, why 4? Why not 3? Why not 6? I mean, if drinking wine, why not 18? It's a good number.
Is it the same?
Chai cups of wine. Why not?
Is that why we have 4 sons? Asking.
Okay, there are 4 sons, but no, there's no
correlation.
There may be on some deeper level, but I'm not aware of a relationship between them.
That was 4 questions.
Were you going to say the 4 sons too? You have a lot of 4s. You have 4 questions, which that relates to 4 sons. I'm not aware of any relationship between the 4 cups of wine and the 4 sons that I'm aware of.
Is it because it makes you tipsy and it gets you in a different state?
Okay, but if that was the reason we should drink most of the wine earlier, we drink half the wine like at the very end, like you drink the last cup after the Seder is over. So Faith also said that each of the 4 questions. Hello, Shira from Southwest Florida. Hello, Art watching from Michigan. I love that we have people from all over watching us. Baruch Hashem. Okay, so the 4 cups of wine are not for the 4 questions. By the way, if we want to be in a different state, each question drink another glass of wine. Then you have all the answers. If after each one of the 4 questions, we drink one of the 4 cups of wine, by the time we're done the 4 questions, it would all make sense.
We talked years ago about getting onto a deeper level, and that's why you drink to...
It's 100% true what you're saying, that wine does take you to a deeper level. There's a very famous statement that nichnas yayin yatsa so, which means in English, when wine goes in, the secrets come out. And in fact, the numerical value of the Hebrew word wine, yayin, yud yud nun is 70. And the numerical value of the Hebrew word for secret, sod, samach is 60, vav is 6, and daled is 4 is also 70. But that's true, but that's not, that's true. It's true. So the reason given in halacha, in the code of Jewish law, for why we drink 4 cups of wine is because in the Torah there are 4 expressions of geula, of redemption, that are used by God to describe the miraculous redemption the Jewish people would experience when they would leave Egypt. So I made it very, very quickly. I found for you online. I'm going to share my screen here in front of you from the book of Exodus. When God comes to Moshe and says to Moshe, I'm going to take the Jewish people out of Egypt, right? What does God say he's going to do? Let me just move this way. So God says, it's in 2 verses. I don't have the verse in front of me, but God says very, very famous verses. God says, tell the Jewish people, V'hotzeisi eschem mitachas sivlos Mitzrayim, which means, I will take you out from the burdens of Egypt. V'hitzalti eschem me'avodasam. I will save you. I literally just copied this, but V'hitzalti, I will save you. I will deliver you from your avoda, from your slave labor. V'ga'alti eschem b'zroya netuya. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm, which I'm given with great judgment. But I will take you for me as a nation. Okay. Here the Torah clearly says, this is all in the Torah together. The Hotzeisi, God promises to take us out of Egypt, number 1. Vihitzalti, number 2, I will save you, God says. Number 3, Viga'alti, I will redeem you. And number 4, Vilakachti, I will take you from me as a nation. So because God uses 4 languages to say basically the same thing, I will take you out of Egypt. I will save you from your work. I will redeem you with great miracles, and I will take you to me as a nation. It's all the same thing, right? Just 4 different ways of saying the same thing. Of course, there's nuances, as we're going to soon discover. But in general, they're all expressions of redemption. They're all promises of God to save us from the slavery and the bondage and the suffering of Egypt. And therefore, in order to commemorate that, God didn't just say, I will save you. But God said 4 different ways. I will take you out, and I will save you, and I will redeem you, and I'll make you my nation. Therefore, we have 4 expressions of redemption, of geula, and therefore, we have 4 cups of wine to remember how God promised to redeem us with these 4 languages. Got it? Okay. That's the classic answer given in the Jewish law. Why we drink 4 cups of wine? Remember the 4 ways that God promised to save us. Now, side note, it's a very interesting side note. If you look in the Torah, it is actually a 5th expression of redemption too. Where God in the next verse says, V'hevesi eschem ala aretz, and I will bring you to the land that I promised your forefathers, the land of Israel. So even though I will bring you to the land also seems like an expression of redemption, it's not counted as one of the 4 expressions because it didn't happen then. It only happened 40 years later. But we really do have a 5th cup of wine at the Seder. What's the 5th cup of wine at the Seder?
Elijah's cup.
Exactly. The cup of Elijah is really the 5th cup at the Seder. We don't drink it, but the 5th cup represents what? What does the cup of Elijah really represent? Mashiach, redemption, the ultimate redemption. Meaning the first half of the Seder is remembering the miracles that happened to us 3,335 years ago, how God took us out of Egypt. The second half of the Seder, after the meal, the Afikomen, which is hidden, and really the Tzofim, Beirach, Hallel, near to the praises, the second half of Hallel, which are the promises of redemption, and Nirtzah, the Shana Haba, Yerushalayim, the year to come in Jerusalem, and the last cup of wine is all about our future redemption. So the cup of Elijah, which is a cup of the one that will be the bearer and the heralder, I don't know if that's an English word, the heralder, the announcer, the blower, the shofar blower, announcing the coming of Mashiach, is the 5th cup, bringing us the land of Israel. Will happen later on. Side note, but it's very interesting to know that the 5th cup also has its scriptural source in the cup, in the verses of redemption. But what we're going to talk about tonight is these 4 expressions of redemption that God promises us, which is why we have 4 cups of wine, by way of another question. Why do we eat matzah on Pesach? Now, I know we talked about matzah last week. I know that. But what's the simple reason? I'm going to talk about matzah again soon. But why are we eating matzah? To remember the redemption. One part of the matzah is the poor man's bread we ate in Egypt. That's why it can't be flavored and all that. True. But as we discussed last week, what do we say in the Haggadah? What's the reason why we're eating matzah? What does Haggadah say? to remember how we ate matzah while we were slaves in Egypt? No, that's not what we read in Haggadah. What do we say in Haggadah? Who remembers from last week?
They have to leave in a hurry.
Yeah.
So they didn't have a chance to rest.
Excellent. You weren't even here last week, but you're correct. David is right. David is right. You paid attention. He was in Hebrew school, I guess. Remember from last year's Seder. But that's exactly what we say. God redeemed and revealed himself with such a tremendous glory that when we were rushed out of Egypt, the dough didn't have a chance to rise. And the words we say in the Haggadah is that God was revealed, the King of all kings revealed himself, etc. We talked last week how the dough couldn't rise because of God's revelation. But the matzah is also remembering the miracle that God did, right? That God redeemed us and saved us. So why don't we have 4 matzahs? Yeah, we should have 4 matzahs. If we have 4 cups of wine to remember the 4 expressions of redemption that God used. So if the matzah is also remembering how God saved us and we were in such a rush to leave Egypt that the dough didn't have a chance to rise, we should also have 4 matzahs to remember 4 redemptions. Now, I'll take 4 cups of wine over 4. Like, I'd rather have 3 matzahs and 4 wines and 4 matzahs and 3 wine. But the question is still a good question. Why don't we have 4 matzahs to remember these 4 expressions of redemption? It's such a good question that there are some commentaries, the Mordechai, who actually say that this classic answer given by the majority of commentaries, that the reason why we have 4 cups of wine is to remember the 4 expressions of redemption, is not correct. Because also that we should have 4 matzahs. Rather, the reason why we have 4 cups of wine is because 4 times in the Torah, God describes salvation with a cup of blessing. Cups of blessing. We say in Havdalah, Kos Yeshua's Esa, because I'll lift up a cup of salvation. Right? That my cup overflows with blessings. 4 times we talk about the Kos of Bracha, the cup of blessing, in 4 different places in Tanakh. So the 4 cups of wine is for the 4 times where God promises a cup of blessing, the cup of his kindness. But that's not the answer brought in Jewish law. In the Shulchan Aruch talks about the 4 expressions of redemption. So what I'm going to share with you now is a beautiful explanation from the Rebbe, from Mekudei Sichos, that explains the difference between the first 3 languages of redemption that are on the page in front of you and the 4th. And will therefore understand why 3 of these expressions of redemption apply both to matzah and to wine. And the 4th one, the one where God says, I'll take you from here as a nation, matzah cannot express this kind of redemption. This kind of redemption could only be expressed through wine. Then we'll understand what's the significance of wine and why matzah is not enough for a complete, wholesome Seder experience. And even though matzah is so important, as we discussed at length last week, just matzah alone is not enough. You need to have wine. So I'm going to put the ball in your court. Was that clear what I just said, first of all? Let me repeat what I just said. I'm going to show you a distinction between the first 3 kinds of redemption mentioned on the paper in front of you. I'm going to share the screen again. And the 4th expression of redemption. And you're going to understand on your own, because you're all smart, why matzah could only express or be a symbol, an icon of the first 3 kinds of redemption, but matzah could not be an icon for the 4th kind of redemption. And then we'll understand why, in order to have a real Pesach Seder, we need to have not only matzah, we also need to have a wine. Okay, here's the 4 expressions. It's on the paper in front of you. I will bring you out from Egypt. I will deliver you from your work. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm. I will take you from me as a people. Can anyone here or online, if you're on Facebook watching us, comment, do you see any difference in the first 3 or when the first 3 happened and when the 4th one happened? I gave you a little bit of a hint there.
3 of them happened in Egypt.
3 of them happened in Egypt.
1 happened afterwards.
1 happened when?
So
Mount Sinai.
how can my people be for a matzah? Well, how can it be for wine too?
Well, we'll get to the matzah and wine soon. Let's first understand the difference between the first 3 and the 4th. The first 3 expressions of redemption, all those are
One is
watching from
temporary, and
Melbourne.
the last one is permanent.
Okay, the last one is permanent. That's a good point. The first two happened, and the last one is an eternal like statute and covenant. Okay.
Well, the last one was on Mount Sinai when we agreed to accept the Torah, right?
The last was at Mount Sinai. Very good. Very, very good. The first three expressions of redemption, where God says, I will bring you out of Egypt. I will deliver you from Egypt. I will redeem you from Egypt. They all happened on the night of the Exodus. When God revealed himself at that moment and killed the Egyptian firstborns, and Pharaoh came running in pajamas in the middle of the night, says, get out of Egypt. We were taken out, we were delivered, we were redeemed. But at that point, God had not yet taken us as a people. When does the fourth verse? When God says, "V'lakachti eschem li la'am," I will take you for me as my people. When does this happen? Only at Mount Sinai. 49 days after God redeemed himself. So the first three expressions of redemption could be expressed through matzah. Why? Because the matzah reminds us of what?
The Exodus.
The Exodus from Egypt. The tremendous revelation of God that didn't allow the dough to rise. We were running, and the Egyptians were saying, here, take my jewelry, take my stuff, take my pots, just go. Yeah, that's I will save you, I will redeem you, I will take you out. That'll happen that night. So the matzah reflects three of the languages of redemption in the Torah.
That's why we have three matzahs. on the
That's,
Seder
well,
day.
there's other reasons too, but the three matzahs do reflect these three languages of redemption. The fourth language of redemption, where God says, I will take you from me as a people, that didn't happen when we ate matzah. That only happened after the 49 days of the counting of the Omer, after we worked through the 7 midot, the 7 emotions of the human psyche, and we refined our character, and we worked on ourselves. And then we came before God and we said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do, and then we'll understand. And we'll work, we purified ourselves. We went to the mikvah, we brought offerings, etc., etc. Now, at Mount Sinai, God says, I've taken you for me as a people. Now, I have to make sure it's clear that the leaving of Egypt and the receiving of the Torah at Mount Sinai are not two separate things. They're two parts of one whole story. God made it clear to Moses at the burning bush that I'm taking the people out of Egypt in order to serve me at the mountain. But it didn't happen at the same time. Three of these expressions of redemption happened immediately. One happened 49 days later. Okay? So, before we get to the matzah and the wine, let's understand the difference between the number 3 and the number 4. Because we have 3 expressions of redemption that happen immediately, and the 4th expression of redemption that only happens later. And which is going to be, by the way, the 3 will be the matzah, and the 4 is going to be the wine. Very good. You're paying attention. So, is anyone familiar with a Gemara or an idea in Judaism of the relationship between the number 3 and the number 4?
The 7 days of the week.
So yeah, when you add, that's when you add them together. That's when you make them all part of one whole. I'm talking about the contrast. Like, 2 and 3 is the division and harmony. What's the contrast or the relationship between the number 3 and the number 4?
It's one more.
Very smart. It's one more. That's true. But that's not unique to the 3 and the 4. That could be also with 4 and 5 and
That's
10 and
That's
12.
true.
So in Kabbalah, before the Kabbalah, let's start with the Gemara, and then we'll get to Kabbalistically.
A parent creates a child with 2 plus God.
There are 3 partners in the birth of a child. That is true. And therefore what?
I don't know.
How does that relate to the 4?
You get the 4th.
The child is the 4th.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that could fit what I'm saying. It's not exactly the language we're going to use, but it's not a conflict at all. I'm going to read to you one more statement, one more text. This is from the Gemara. It's a pretty famous Gemara. It's in Shabbos. And what's interesting about this Gemara, page 104, is it talks about the letters of the alphabet. Aleph and Beis. Aleph is wisdom, Bin is understanding, the studying, and then talking about the Gimel and the Dalet. Says the Gemara in Shabbos, Gimel Dalet is these two letters at the beginning of 2 words. Gmol Dalet. Who speaks Hebrew? What does Gmol mean? Maybe he's not feeling well. He's sure for Shlomo. What is Gmilut Chasadim? You heard that word, Gmilut Chasadim? You heard that word? Gmol means to give. Gmilut Chasadim means to bestow kindness. Gmol means to give. Dalim means poor. So Gmol Dalim, which is Gimel Dalim, sounds very familiar, it's very similar, right? Gimel Dalim, Gmol Dalim. We're going to read the text. Gimel Dalim means to give to the poor. Gmol Dalim. Asks the Talmud, why is the leg of the Gimel extended toward the Dalit? You know what a Gimel looks like? Let me highlight this little Gimel right here. That's a Gimel. So the leg of the Gimel is facing forward, right, towards the Dalit. Why is the leg of the Gimel facing the Dalit? Because it is a manner of one who bestows loving kindness to pursue the poor. And why is the leg of the Dalit, the top of the Dalit, on the top, with a little line on the top, why is it extended toward the Gimel? It is so that the poor person will make himself available to the person who wants to give charity. And why does the Dalit face away from the Gimel? To teach that one should give charity discreetly so the poor person will not be embarrassed. Very interesting relationship between the Gimel, with the foot forward to give, and the Dalit who's turned away, receiving but turned away, not to be embarrassed. What's the point? What's the takeaway from this? What do I want to share with you? Help me out, my smart friends over here. What is the relationship between Gimel and Dalit?
They're friends.
They're friends, but they're not. They're friends, but one is the giver, and one is the receiver. Gmol in Hebrew means to give. A dal is a poor person. The Gimel has a leg facing forward to give. The Dalit receives. Think about the number 3, the vowel segol, which has 3, right? 3 dots flowing down. Think about 4 corners of the box that receives. Think about in wisdom. So the example given in Chassidus and Kabbalah is when you want to teach an idea. If I wanted to share a concept with you, for example, so I want to share what I have in my head, I want to share it with you. What needs to happen for me to share that idea with you? 3 things. First, I need to think what I want to share. I have to have the idea that I want to share. Then I need to have the limitation, what I'm not going to share. I don't want to overwhelm me with an abundance of knowledge. I have to limit and channel and focus the point I want to make, how to make it. And then there's a combination of the two where I actually share in actuality, in speech and in language or in action, what I was thinking to share. So there's 3 parts to giving. And the 4th is the student internalizing that idea in his own brain. So in Kabbalah, the number 3 verses 4 reflects giving and receiving. Hopefully you understood the Gimel Dalim, the Talmud, and what I explained. But even if you didn't, that's fine. Here's all you need to know. In Kabbalah, the number 3 is the number of giving. Or to use Kabbalistic language, the language of mashpia, of giver. The number 4 is a number that Kabbalistically, that spiritually reflects the energy of receiving. Or internalizing, rather. Got it? That's easy. That's clear. So, we have 3 is the idea of giving, and 4, Dalit, is a number of receiving. Now, if you, my friends, let's go now back to matzah and maror and wine. Let's go back to the Pesach experience. Let's go first Pesach experience. The first 3 expressions of redemption that we quoted earlier tonight. Those 3 expressions, is there any element of a person working, or is it all God-giving? It's all God-giving, right? When God says, I will take you out of Egypt, who's doing something here? God. What are the Jews doing to be taken out of Egypt? Nothing. I will redeem you. That's God doing something for us. I will save you. Again, that's God doing something for us. These 3 first expressions of redemption that we remember at our Seder table are all what God does for us. And that's exactly what the matzah is. What's the matzah? What did we explain last week? I know David wasn't here, so I'll repeat it for David. You're my excuse to repeat what I said last week. I didn't want to prepare a new class. I'm just joking. What did we say last week? Matzah is such a tremendous divine infusion of holiness that the matzah couldn't rise, the dough couldn't rise. That's why it's an infusion of emunah, of faith in God. What's faith? What does it mean to believe in God? To believe that there's a creator to the universe?
It's something you can't run.
Something you can't rationalize.
Something you can take care of you.
But the idea that God will take care of you when it's logical, when I can understand that it's logic. When things look terrible and you still believe God will take care of you, that's when it's faith. Faith is about transcendence from the human mind. As we discussed at length last week, if you didn't enjoy last week's class, it's on Facebook, it's on YouTube. Search my name on YouTube. You'll watch last week's class. I think it's a very important, my very unbiased opinion. I think that it's, besides from being brilliant and all that, of course, no, I'm saying, it's actually a very important class to watch before Pesach. I'm not being sarcastic now, I'm being very serious. If you want to appreciate why Shmur Matzah is so important, you need to watch last week's class where we discussed the idea of the emunah that God infuses into the matzah. But all of that is what God does to us. All of the greatness of matzah, which is great, which is important for the identity of a Jew who's a believer, the son of the believers. It's part of our DNA to believe in God, to believe in a transcendent way, to believe in a way that's supra-rational, to believe in a way that's beyond whatever we can achieve intellectually. And that's why there's a biblical commandment to eat the matzah. It's a mitzvah, a biblical commandment. In fact, it's the only mitzvah today, the only food we eat today all year that it's a biblical commandment is matzah. Every other food, kiddush, whatever, it's all rabbinic. God explicitly tells us in the Torah, you must eat matzah on the night of Pesach. So when we eat the matzah, we're doing what God tells us. God is the giver and we're receiving. Got that? Before I go to the next step, we have to understand the energy of three, which is the energy of matzah. It's the energy of the first three languages of redemption. It's an energy of God revealing himself in all of his greatness and all of his glory, and us being so overwhelmed and so wowed by the experience that we're infused with a faith in God that transcends our logic. Hence, number three matzahs, because in Kabbalah, the number three is a number of giving. In this case, it's God giving to us. Excellent. You guys are brilliant. Hopefully, everyone that's watching us online is as brilliant as all of you sitting here. Clear? Clear. Okay. Now, after the night of the Exodus happens, and we've experienced this tremendous divine revelation, we've seen God, the King of all kings, Melech, Malach, Amlach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is revealed himself. He's just miraculously saved us. That's beautiful. What's next? 49 days of the counting of the Omer, or as Marsha correctly said, us. The second day of Passover, we start to do something called counting the Omer, or in more psychological language, start self-transformation. We start working on our character. The night of Pesach, we didn't do anything to our character. We literally just ate matzah. We had to say, and God just, bam, blew us out of Egypt. But then God says, now you need to start preparing yourself to stand at Mount Sinai. To stand at Mount Sinai requires human effort. It requires us internalizing and getting ready to receive. 4 is the number of receiving. By the way, so that's why by Shavuos we eat chametz. In Pesach we eat matzah. Well, I don't get distracted. And Shavuos we eat chametz. Anyway, the point is, we now start to work on our own levels of understanding and being able to internalize God. And therefore, this is expressed in the idea of wine. What is wine? Simply, what is wine?
Grapes.
Well, yeah, it's grape, but you take the grape. It's not a grape. You can eat grapes. I had grapes today.
Yeah, but you didn't smash it.
I didn't smash them. I didn't ferment them. I didn't, I don't know what else goes into the process. I just took grapes out of a bag and ate grapes. And I mean, they were good grapes. Nothing, it was a little old, but like in the hummus. But nothing, they're grapes. They're not alcohol. They're not wine. They're not a prestigious food that has the prominence and the value and the impact that wine has, because it hasn't gone through any kind of transformative process.
It has a much more process.
Correct. Wine, unlike grapes, represents the levels of human comprehension. Wine is flavor, and not like cheap flavor like sugar, not candy flavor. Wine is a sophisticated flavor. Wine is a flavor. You have to develop it. You have to understand it. You have to analyze it. You smell the wine. You taste the wine. You taste with the front of your tongue, the back of your tongue, the top of your mouth. Right? There's a whole science to understanding wine. So again, just trust me now. In Kabbalah, in language of spiritual metaphors, the idea of intellectual achievement is expressed through wine. And it makes sense just even like very, very physically. Of all the foods we eat, which food is a food that represents sophistication and through a transformative process to be what's what I'm looking for? Not just dignified, but like on a sophisticated food is wine. Meat is meat, right? Whatever. It's a good meat. You cooked it well, you didn't cook it well. I don't know what else. Salad is salad. Wine is a food or a drink of transformation. Took a grape and you revealed through its fermenting process, revealed a whole new dimension to it. But it's sophisticated. It's you have to appreciate it. That's the idea of intellect. The idea of intellect. Wine makes the heart rejoice. You know what else makes a person rejoice? Wisdom. The mother of the Bina. Bina is understanding. And in Kabbalah, Bina, Chachma is water. Bina only goes all this, there's water, there's Chachma, and then there's Bina. Bina, understanding, comprehension, that's wine. That's wine. So the process of a person working to understand God, to internalize God, to work on his own self-refinement, to be on a spiritual level, ready to receive the Torah at Mount Sinai. The physical metaphor for that is wine. Wine is expressed in the number 4. Because 4 is the way we internalize, we are the receivers internalizing the wisdom that God gave us. So on Pesach night, it's not just enough to have matzah, which is the most important thing, the emunah in God, the faith in God, the trust in God, the ability to transcend our comprehension and to say, God, whatever you say, I trust you explicitly. To have a complete, wholesome Seder experience, you know what else we need to do? Drink wine. And not just a little bit of wine, 4 cups of wine. Not just for the first 3 expressions of redemption where God did something top down to us and we weren't transformed by the experience. As Marsha correctly said, it happened and after it was over. God redeemed us, then we could go to another slavery. But to create a new identity that we are the people of God, that requires us to work. And that is the idea of a Jew. How do we work? By learning. That's how we work. Faith is not something we work to do. Faith is something we have. God gives us, and obviously we have to work on it as well, but it comes through learning. Learning is how a Jew prepares themselves to be God's people. Which is why, by the way, the eating of the matzah is a biblical commandment. The drinking of the wine is a rabbinical commandment. The Torah doesn't say explicitly, thou shalt drink 4 cups of wine. It does say you should eat matzah. The rabbis are the one who told us to drink 4 cups of wine, to remember these 4 expressions of redemption, because this is not about God telling us what to do. This is about us working and transforming ourselves and inspiring ourselves to be vessels, to be receptive to God at Mount Sinai. I'll give you an example of the difference. An example? Let's say you're in a desert, a place there's no water. There's 2 ways to bring water to that place. One way to bring water to the place is praying. Okay. The other way of doing it, the Israeli way of doing it, we were in Israel, and you see all the drip irrigation. You take piping and you build canals, or you take plumbing and you bring pipes, you bring water there. Very good. You brought water there, so now there's water. But have you transformed the space into a place that's inherently self-sustaining with water? No. It requires you to constantly keep on bringing more water. And the moment you stop bringing water, it goes back to being a desert. The other solution is you can start digging deep, deep in the earth and remove the rocks, and remove the sand, and remove the dirt, remove everything underground. And what are you going to get?
Hopefully oil.
Eventually, if you're in Israel, you get oil. Okay, even better.
Hopefully.
You get oil. Oil's more expensive. I'll take oil over water. You're going to get water. And you're now going to have transformed the area in which you are from a desert into an oasis.
Interesting.
You understand? So there's two parts to our Seder experience. Huh?
It's hard work.
Of course it's hard work. It's absolutely hard work. No one ever said it's easy. It's not easy. It's hard work. Yes, that's correct. In order for us to transform ourselves, counting the Omer is hard. Working on learning wisdom of God, it's hard. To learn Torah is brilliant, is easy. But to learn in the way that you're transcending yourself to understand the wisdom of God is hard. It's hard. And yet to have a complete, cohesive Seder experience, you need matzah, which has no flavor. Matzah has no taste. It's not allowed to have taste. Because matzah represents complete humility and nullification before God, where we're transcending our understanding, we're transcending our intellect, we're transcending the limitations of human logic, and accepting God. God's revealing himself. It's all about receiving God's greatness. So the matzah, if it would have flavor, would interfere with being a true vessel of God's revelation at the Exodus. But before and after, besides for eating the matzah, if we're sitting at a real Seder experience, we also need to be drinking wine. And the point of the drinking of the wine is to taste the flavor of the wine, to experience the joy of the wine. That's what Bina, that's what understanding is. It tastes good, it makes us feel good, we appreciate it, we understand it, we're enjoying it. And this is a level not where we're losing any sense of self-identity, which is what we feel when we eat the matzah, but the opposite, where we become very self-aware in how we're internalizing the wisdom of God to grow in our own learning, our own understanding, our own greatness of God. And so this is the two parts of the Seder experience. One part, the most important part, I'll repeat, the most important is the biblical commandment of matzah, of humility, of emunah, of trust and faith in God, to accept that God will take us out of any limitations in our life, any Egypt, any struggle. God can save us. But at the same time, we also have to drink wine. We can't be satisfied with just this top-down, plumbing where God's showering us with his blessings. We need to dig deep. We need to find a well. And we need to find a way to transform ourselves to become better people. That's the two steps of the matzah and of the wine. And the truth is, the second step is much harder. Many people can handle the matzah, they can handle. Matzah, even some people have a hard time with that too, it's true. But generally speaking, it's much easier to be overwhelmed by holiness than to work on creating your own taste and your own flavor and your own sense of self-identity through the wine. But if you want to really, really become one with God, you can't just have the three. You also need to have the four, which is the idea of the wine. Okay? I think if I can think of a good story that will express this idea, because I didn't think of one before. I have nothing to go with on the top of my head. I only have a story. But whatever, this is the idea of a Jew, chassid. I'll tell you a story. What are the key differences between the approach of the Alter Rebbe the key difference in the approach of the Alter Rebbe and the other Hasidim, and I just thought of a story, was that the other students of the Baal Shem Tov were big believers that the Rebbe is the connection to God, and you trust the Rebbe, and the Rebbe will take care of you. In fact, Rabbi Aaron Kalina used to explain the verse, Tzaddik b'manasa yichya, that a tzaddik will live through his emunah. Don't read that he will live through his faith in God, but tzaddik b'manasa yichaya. A tzaddik, through his emunah, through his faith in God, through his holiness and his spirituality, he will infuse a life to you. So you just connect to the tzaddik, you come and get the food of the tzaddik, come and get the blessing of the tzaddik, come and get the shirayim of the tzaddik, and the tzaddik will lift you up. The Alter Rebbe was the only one really who fought against his colleagues. They were all holy, they were all sourced in Torah. And the Alter Rebbe felt very, very strongly that we need to work on our own. That we need to have our own understanding and our own level of recognition and understanding of what is our purpose in the world, what's our purpose in existence, who are we, how are we composed in two souls. And when the Alter Rebbe wrote the Tanya, those who are familiar with the history of the Tanya and the history of Chabad, it was unbelievably revolutionary at the time. Today, I understand and you need to understand. When the Alter Rebbe decided to write a book that will logically and coherently explain Kabbalistic ideas of purpose of a creation, of how we were formed, of the psyche of our godly soul, our animal soul, our struggles, our purpose in struggling, purpose of doing a mitzvah. His colleagues were upset at him. They said, you're destroying the whole fabric. Tzaddik b'manasa yichaya. A tzaddik through his holiness will give others life. And you're telling people they don't need the tzaddik, they should learn Tanya on their own. They struggled with that. But this was always what made Chabad unique. It's not enough to have faith in God. It's not enough to have an emotional connection to God. You also need to have an intellectual connection with God. And by the very first Farbrengen of the Rebbe, 1951, when the Rebbe was the very first Farbrengen, the Rebbe became Rebbe, our Rebbe, whose birthday was yesterday. It's actually good to talk the story of the Rebbe. His birthday was yesterday. And when the Rebbe formally accepted the leadership of the Chabad movement on the first Yahrzeit of his father-in-law on the day of Yud Shvat, the 10th day of Shvat, 1951, so the Rebbe said as follows. Besides the whole Maimer, and we talked about in the 7 generations, etc. The Rebbe said, Legdish king fegelach in bosom. You know what that means in English? It's a Yiddish expression. Legdish king fegelach in bosom. Bruce, you know what it means? No, you know,
I do remember what.
Sounds familiar.
Very familiar.
Fegel is a bird. So Legdish king fegelach in bosom is a Yiddish expression. Don't put any birds in your bosom, in your shirt pocket. If you have a bird, you want to keep the bird, don't put it in your pocket. It's not going to stay there. It's going to fly away. It's especially like when you have like dreams, like, you know, don't put the bird in your pocket. It's not going to stay there, basically. So the Rebbe said, Legdish king fegelach in bosom. Don't put any birds in your pocket. Don't think that now you have a Rebbe, you can go back to your home and you can relax and you can read the newspaper and drink orange juice and everything will be okay and the Rebbe will do the hard work for you. The Rebbe said, I'll help you and I'll give you answers and I'll work with you, but each one of you are going to have to work. Don't think, I got a Rebbe, he's got it under control, it's all good. Don't get any grand ideas that it's going to be that way. I'm here to help, but only to help. You got to do the work on your own. And this was a very important idea to the Rebbe. People need to work. I was thinking of a story. The Rebbe, I don't remember who it was, I think maybe Rebbe Lou, where the Rebbe, this other rabbi was speaking about a very influential member of their community, of this rabbi's community. And the Rebbe told, and this person came very, very close to Chabad, and he had a very special relationship with the Rebbe. I think it was Zalman Jaffe, maybe. I may be wrong with the names, so don't quote me. He was very close to the Rebbe, very close to Chabad, a big supporter of Chabad, came to 770 many times, but he didn't have a beard. And the Rebbe wanted that he should grow. So the Rebbe told this rabbi he should try to influence him to grow his beard, but he shouldn't tell him that the Rebbe said it. Meaning the Rebbe wanted this rabbi to try and influence this member of his community to grow a beard, but without letting him know that the Rebbe had said so. So he tried, but it didn't go. Not everyone's ready for a certain. To grow a beard is a big step, especially this. We're talking about like today, where, going back 70s or whatever, like, civilized people didn't walk around with beards. Hippies walked around with beards. Not successful businessmen didn't walk around with beards. So a year later, this rabbi was back and didn't have success to report about the beard. So he said to the Rebbe, if I just tell him what the Rebbe wants, he'll for sure do it. If this person would know that you asked that he should grow a beard, yeah, I'm confident that if he knew that the Rebbe wanted it, he would do it. But you're not letting me do my job. You're telling me to tell him, but I can't tell him that you're saying, so let me tell him you want it, it'll be done. So the Rebbe told this rabbi, if you tell him that I suggested he should grow a beard, then there won't be him growing a beard. It'll be me growing a beard on his face. You understand? He'll be doing it not because he's at that level, he's ready to make that commitment to God and have the beard. He'll do it because I asked for it, so it'll be me growing a beard on his face. Understand? Sometimes that's okay. That's matzah. That's emunah, where we transcend ourselves. But real change, real transformation, like making wine out of grapes. It's not a one-day process. It doesn't happen instantly all of a sudden. Americans don't know this, but you sometimes have to wait for things to happen over a long time. It's not like instantly you put it in the microwave and 10 minutes later, you got a glass of wine to drink. It's to sit in the barrel and ferment. It's a process. You got to do it all right. But when you do it right, then you have beautiful wine, yeah.
And the finer the wine,
The longer it takes.
Yeah.
Of course, the more the process.
It's more smoother.
Whatever, I'm not an expert in wines, to be honest. But the point is, it's a process, and you got to do it right, and you got to be patient, and you got to work step by step. And this is the ultimate level of Mount Sinai. The point of the Exodus from Egypt, as I mentioned already earlier, was not for the sake of the Exodus. We forget very often, we get so focused on the story of Egypt and Mitzrayim and Pesach and Exodus. We think the Exodus was like the end of the story. The Exodus was not an end unto itself. The Exodus was the beginning, a means to an end. As God clearly said to Moshe at the burning bush, I'm taking the Jews out of Egypt in order that they may serve me at this mountain. Burning bush was at Mount Sinai. I'm taking them out in order to serve me. People, they use as a slogan for the Russian Jews, let my people go. They forget to let my people go in order that they may serve me. That's the whole verse. Let them go from Egypt so they can serve me at this mountain. So the point of the Exodus is not just for the Exodus. The point of the Exodus is to be working on ourselves, to come to a point where we can take the Torah and be v'lakachti eschem lila amar. God could say about us, I've taken them to me as a nation. Understand? That's the story of the Pesach Seder. The whole story. The matzah and the wine. The humility to God and the effort to understand and to work and to change ourselves to be the people of God. Okay, my friends. That's the story. Yes, let's take any comments, any questions.
Good story.
What?
Good story.
Glad you like it. Okay. Okay, my friends. Next Monday night, obviously, there's no class. Next Monday night is middle of Pesach. So there'll be no class next Monday night. But then the Monday night after, whatever the date is, we'll be back in action. Back to
17th of April.
17th of April. Bezrat Hashem, we'll all be healthy and good. We'll be back in person. 17th of April, and we'll be back to me and the Bible. I have no idea who we'll be talking about. I haven't thought so far ahead. I won't think about it until after Pesach is over. But God willing, back to...
So we start counting the Omer
yes.
on Thursday night.
On the second night of Pesach, yes. On Thursday night, we start counting the Omer, yes.
You can't look it up on your phone.
No.
Well, it's pretty hard to forget what night it is on the second night of Pesach because the first night.
What did you say?
What?
You got to print it out.
It's in the prayer book. It's in the Seder. It's in the Seder. If you look, I don't know, page by heart, page 121. Look at page 121. No, let me like 130. No, 130. 132.
It's right
132. Look at page 132.
It's right before the prayer before retiring at night.
Correct, after Ma'ariv.
So that would be
132 is still Ma'ariv.
139. 139 maybe. Okay.
somewhere.
Robert, whatever. It's in the prayer book right after Ma'ariv is in there.
When
Okay.
you say
You want a story about Elijah?
Elijah, sure. What's that? Good night. Is it true? Okay, Martha, I'm glad that you enjoyed. Baruch Hashem. So we have a question. Is it true that not all Jews follow Moses out of Egypt? It's a very good question, Joe. Is it true that not all Jews follow Moses out of Egypt?
20%.
Yes. So it says in the Torah, the Chamushim alu b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. The Chamushim literally means that they went out armed, that they had weapons. But Rashi tells us, based on the Medrash, actually Medrash gives different opinions. The Chamishim, meaning 1/5 of the Jews left Egypt, meaning that for every Jew that made it out of Egypt, there was 4 Jews that didn't make it out of Egypt. 80% didn't make it out of Egypt. Another opinion, the Chamishim, meaning 1/50th. For every Jew that left Egypt, 49 Jews didn't make it out. And another opinion is Chamesh Meos, 500, meaning that for every Jew that left Egypt, 499 didn't make it out, which is a crazy number. Which means that 600,000 men left Egypt, about 3 million people, and that's only one. Even if it's 1/5, okay, meaning 80% of the Jews didn't leave Egypt. So if 3 million Jews left Egypt, how many Jews were there in Egypt before the Exodus? Before the 10 plagues?
About 150,000.
No, there was 3 million Jews,
3 million Jews.
and that's only 20%.
Oh, okay.
600,000.
I was doing it the other way when you said the 15%. That's where I was doing it.
1/5 of the Jews left, which means that 4/5 didn't leave, which means that there was approximately 3 million Jews at the time of the Exodus
who left?
who left.
12
That means that there was
stayed.
approximately 15 million. Yeah, so 15 million Jews alive when Pharaoh enslaves the Jewish people. We can get an idea why he's feeling threatened by the Jewish people. We're talking about 15 million Jews. According to other opinions, he's talking about much more. He's talking about 90 million Jews. Whatever, crazy numbers. You understand? Anyway, that's not the question, Joe. Yeah. So most Jews did not follow. But what do we say to the wicked son of the Haggadah? Let's see if they remember this one. What do we say to the wicked son of the Haggadah? He separates himself from the community by saying, "What is this that God commanded you and not me?" So what do we answer him?
You wouldn't have been,
Very good. If you would have been there, you wouldn't have left Egypt. What's the implication? We say in Haggadah, only 1/5 of the Jews left, which means if you would have been in Egypt and you would have said, "Why is God commanding you?" and they would have separated, and you, the wicked son, would have separated yourself from the rest of us, you would have remained in Egypt. So why are we saying that to the wicked son? Because then in Egypt, only people that were willing to accept God left because they made the covenant with God at Mount Sinai. So to be a Jew before the giving of the Torah meant that you believed in God. Once God made a covenant with us at Mount Sinai, what does it mean to be a Jew today? That you're born with the DNA of a Jew. You don't have to be a believer today to be a Jew. You can be an atheist and still be a Jew. You can be a believer and not be a Jew, and you can be an atheist and be a Jew.
You can be a Jew and not even know you're
That's also true.
until you do ancestry
Today-
DNA.
For whatever that's worth, but yes, you can be a Jew and never put on fill. And today, this is a few hours ago, I went to someone's office to bring him matzah. Sitting in his office with 4 Jews around the table having a meeting. So I crashed his business meeting. 2 doctors there, whatever. One Jew put on film every day already. He put on, and the 2 other people sitting at the table. One of them didn't want to put on, but one of them had never put on film before in his life. He's not a young man. He didn't tell me his age. I asked him. He's not a young man. And first time in his life, he put on film today. It's bar mitzvah. He's saying, "Simon Malta." They bought a bottle of vodka. We didn't end up drinking it, but they bought it out. So, wow. Point is, he's a Jew. He's in the 70s or 80s. Definitely an older person. And yet today was somebody said bar mitzvah, but he was still a Jew before today. Because once God made a covenant with us at Mount Sinai, That's it. Every single Jew will be part of the ultimate redemption. It's going to happen, God willing, very, very soon. With Mashiach, every Jew will be there. So it takes the wicked son. You're trying to separate yourself, saying, well, you and not me. If you would have been then where Judaism was, you believed in God, you would have not made it. But today, you're part of us. You're going to have redemption together with us when Mashiach comes. And by the way, the flip side, the negative side of that, when, for example, Hitler came around looking for Jews, he didn't care who was a believer, who was an atheist.
Right.
Hitler didn't say, let me give you a test, see how good you did in Hebrew school to see if you're a Jew or not. He didn't care. You're a Jew, you're a Jew. That's on the negative. But we're saying on the positive, that when Mashiach will come, every Jew is going to be redeemed. Okay, my friends? Good question, Joe. Okay, Laila Tov. I wish you all a healthy, happy, a kosher, a freilich, and Pesach, a meaningful Pesach, a sweet Pesach, a beautiful Pesach, a Pesach of liberation, of only blessings and good things. Okay, Laila Tov.